Good morning, everyone. We want to welcome you to our second session of the West Virginia Afterschool Conference. Our speaker today is Ms. Teryl Jones,
All right.
and she is a behavior support specialist for the West Virginia Autism Training Center's Behavior Mental Health Technical Assistance Center at Marshall University. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and a Master's degree in Clinical Counseling and Religious Studies. Terrell serves 14 counties of West Virginia's Southern District as part of a team of behavioral professionals established to implement a system-wide delivery of behavior and mental health intervention and supports throughout the state of West Virginia. Terrell has 14 years experience working with people with disabilities in the field of rehabilitation counseling, both as a transition school counselor and as a supervisor, as well as 4 years as a mental health therapist. And so I'm going to turn it over to Miss Jones, and she is going to give us all kind of good information today.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Wonderful job. You did a great job. It took me 2 months to say West Virginia Behavioral Mental Health Technical Assistance Center. Trust me. So I'm glad that you said that for me. But yeah, today we are going to be talking about self-care when you need it most. And yes, we all need it most. And before I go on, I want to say just real quickly that this presentation, even though I've done a lot of research, I've been presenting on self-care for, probably about 4 or 5 years now, and it's become my passion, especially for educators. But just because I have a large background of scientific evidence-based research on what I'm talking about, it does not mean that I am a guru or a self-care ninja. Alrighty. I just want you all to know that, we're in this together. I don't want anything that I go over, please do not, it's not going to be a guilt trip. It's not, I can't believe you're not doing this already. We are where we are. And if we can use one or two of these self-care strategies that I provide you with, that's, to me, I consider that a high five. So once again, I'm going to share with you what I've learned, and I have my good days with self-care. I have my good months, but when I'm doing good, then I think I can slack off a little bit. But we need to be careful of that. But I hope that you find this presentation on self-care to be rewarding. Once again, we are in collaboration, the Technical Assistance Center, with the West Virginia Autism Training Center located at Marshall University and the West Virginia Department of Education under Special Ed. And so just real quickly for the sake of time, the Technical Assistance Center, we have three main projects. The school-wide PBIS, which is under the program coordinator, Alicia Zeman, early childhood PBIS, which is positive behavioral interventions and supports, which is under Dr. Amy Carlson, and mental health first aid, which is something that we are starting to train a lot of our individuals in West Virginia on: youth mental health first aid, adult mental health first aid, and hopefully soon child mental health first aid. And that is under the program coordinator, Diana Bailey Miller. So if you see on the map, we've got a total of 7 behavior support specialists, 4 school-wide, 2 early childhood, and we have 1 project aware. Really up in the top, Christy Fubio. All right, enough of that. Let's keep going. All right, so the mission of the West Virginia Behavioral Mental Health Technical Assistance Center is to assist teachers, students, families, and communities that are faced with challenging behaviors and mental health issues. And we do it by way of trainings. We provide a lot of resources, and everything that we do is an evidence-based strategy and intervention. So some of the things that we do, the trainings is childhood trauma, informed classrooms, challenging behaviors in classroom procedures, functions of behavior data analysis, family engagement, self-care for educators. And if it's not on our menu, we can develop what you need that fits the need of your after-school program or your school. Now, I'm going to be talking a lot about stress in this first part, specifically because stress has such a huge impact on the way we perceive the world, on how we act, what we think. And it's really kind of, a lot of times it's done on an unconscious level. So how does stress impact our thoughts, our minds, our emotions, our bodies? It's extremely important that we understand that before we apply any self-care strategy. So once again, the first thing, a stressor is anything that disrupts a homeostasis, And so this is according to Sapolsky, who is a great research person on stress. Now, for those of you who go like homeostasis, I had that in biology 101. What is that? Here's a refresher, okay, a little refresher quiz. Homeostasis in the body is any self-regulating process by which the organism tends to maintain stability while adjusting to conditions that are best for its survival. So let's just clear it up. Let me give you an example. So you're going to rough it out. You're saying, I left something in the car, it's snowing outside, it's really cold, or I got to get the mail, forget the coat, I'm going to rough it out. So you run to the car, or you run down the driveway, you grab the mail, and you come back up, and what happens, lo and behold, you're shaking. That is because the temperature of your body has been disrupted by the coldness outside. So your brain, and we're going to talk a lot about the brain, your brain has, it's the purposes of the lower part of the brain, the limbic system and the reptilian part of the brain, it has one purpose only, to keep you alive and to keep you safe. And this is all done automatically. You breathe, you don't think about it. That's your lower part of the brain telling your body to breathe. Same thing happens. So what happens when you get into the house, or you get near the house after running outside in the cold without a jacket, you're shivering. That is your brain putting stress on your body to make it shiver so that it can increase the temperature to maintain somewhat of a homeostasis status. That's in a nutshell. Now, there are 3 types of stress that we need to talk about before applying self-care strategies: positive stress, negative stress, and toxic stress. So positive stress is actually a good thing. I remember one time I started researching this. I'm like, there's such a thing as positive stress? There is. It's a normal and essential part of a healthy development, such as when we shiver. We need to do that. It's essential that we shiver to keep our body temperatures up so that we don't freeze. It's also brief increase of the heart rate is when we have positive stress. It's a mild elevation of hormone levels. And examples, the best example that I can give is when you're driving down a country road, and in the summertime, we're whipping around those corners, 90 miles per hour like a roller coaster, shaking, yay! But, and I know because I drive a lot in Clay County in the mountains, in the wintertime when I go out into Clay County, that's no such thing. I've got a lot of positive stress in my body, okay? A lot of cortisone going through my body. If you see, that's probably me at the steering wheel. You clutch the steering wheel and your heart rate increases and you stay more focused. You might turn down the music, or if there's other people in the car, say, hey guys, can you hold it down till I get around this corner? That's positive stress. We need that in our lives, especially when you all interviewed for your job and you got that, oh my gosh, and you want to prepare for it and you came alert. That's positive stress that got you through that interview and that job. So now, what is negative stress? All right. So according to Medina, and then you can see the references down below. There are 3 elements of negative stress. We have, there needs to be a physiological response. It must be perceived as adversive, and a sense of having little to no control. So let's start off with the treadmill, which I really call the dreadmill because I dread my treadmill. All righty, so now here we have a treadmill. Is there a physical response? Absolutely. That's the purpose of a treadmill, to give us a physical response. Is it perceived as evasive, aversive? Yeah, I can't even say the words and they're my slides. Aversive. Well, some people, yes, because we start using them as a clothing rack. It's an extension of our closet. Okay, so yes, they can be perceived as that. Is there a sense of having little to no control? Well, when it comes to a treadmill, actually, we have 100% control of that treadmill, of whether we get on or off. But now, really, a lot of times, and this is really important, I'm going to put a little bit of time into this, regarding negative stress. It really is based on whether we have control of it or not on the eye of the beholder. And let me explain why. And this is why some people said, I actually had some people during COVID said, it wasn't a problem at all. Where some people were like, are you kidding me? I felt like I was living in toxic stress and I still do day by day. So really it's in the eyes of the beholder. Let me give an example. So you have an individual, it could be a woman or a man, a male living in an abusive relationship. Alrighty. And so what happens is when you look at that relationship, is there a physiological response? Absolutely. This is a negative stress on this person. It is perceived as aversive. And there is a sense that they have little to no control. Now, in the eye of the beholder, because we can say, why don't they just leave? Why do they stay with this individual? Because there's something called perceived control. And this even enters into our life, whether we don't have to be in an abusive relationship to have this affect us. Perceived control, and I encourage you all to look at this. This is a highly researched topic. It means just if you have the belief, perceived control it means you don't even have to have the control. It's if you have the belief that you have control is what that matters. In fact, there's a lot of research out there that shows People that didn't have control, but they believed they had control, their anxiety and stress levels reduced considerably. So the reason why we have individuals stay in abusive relationships or toxic stress work environments is because they don't have the belief that they can change. They don't have the belief that they have the ability to change their situation because of that perceived control. So then we're going to skip on over to toxic stress. So toxic stress, basically, according to Frankie, it's a prolonged activation of a stress response, fight, flight, freeze. And it's a failure of the body to recover fully. So we have all these stressors. It's like wave after wave after wave, push you down. If you've ever been in the ocean during when you have a really big storm coming in and everyone wants to go to the ocean because it's fun to be in the waves. But then when one waves push you down before you get back up, the other one comes. I lived in Marquette, Michigan, and Lake Superior was known for doing this to her victims. And what would happen is it was almost like a wave after wave, because when one person would get up, or when a person would get up, the wave would push that person back down, and they would sometimes hit their head on the bottom where there was a rock, and then the current would take them. Sometimes that's how we feel with toxic stress, that before we have a time to recover from one negative stress or one negative exposure, the other one comes to wipe us back down. And sometimes there's that rock that we fall on. So that's why it's very important that we have self-care strategies and also those support systems put in place when we do get knocked down by these waves. So anyway, toxic stress has a lot of wear and tear on the body and the brain, a lot of it. And we do a lot of research when we work with children and adults who have a past experience of trauma, how it affects the brain development, even from in the womb. It affects the brain development all the way up into adulthood. And it's also with toxic stress, it's the inability to return back to homeostasis. Remember what I talked about that. It's that keeping things at a balance. And basically it's when happens, there's an absence of a protective supports. Protective supports. It's going to end in free. What does that mean? Thank you so much for that. Told you. Virtual. Love it. Alrighty. So anyway, it's an absence of protective supports, and a protective support is basically having those people in your lives that when you get knocked down, they're there to pick you up. Or a protective support could be a self-care strategy that you're already ready to put it into place, and you got knocked down, you go to your protective strategy and you use it. And we're going to talk about a lot of those, and I'm going to give you personal experiences of my own. Now with toxic stress, and we have COVID-19. A lot of us, not all of us, some of us, we may have been a negative stress, but because of our life situation, because we were not in a work environment, we were constantly being exposed to people that might be having COVID. So they were able to adjust and move through it. And those are the people that I spoke to that said it was, I didn't even mind being home during that time of isolation, because I went for more walks. I spent time, I got to do things that I typically didn't do. Yes, it was negative, but I got through it. Toxic stress, it's difficult to get through it because remember, it's that wave after wave after wave. And I've talked to so many people in the educational field, in the mental health field, even in the physical health field, that they've experienced a lot of toxic stress because not only were they going into the work environment where they were possibly being exposed to COVID, it's like you didn't know, but they may have been taking care of an elderly person or someone in the household, or they themselves who has a physical impairment. I remember speaking to a teacher in elementary school. She said, I feel like toxic stress with COVID when I was going over this PowerPoint with her. She says, because my husband is recovering from cancer and I have to go into the classroom day after day, keeping very cautious, wearing my mask, making sure that everything is clean, knowing that there's a good chance I could bring COVID home. That's that wave after wave. And lo and behold, once again, here we go. Once we start having these dine-ins with our families, we're able to see the people we haven't seen in years. I didn't see my mother, who's 85 now, for a year and a half because of COVID. So I got to see her, but now she's in quarantine again because the cases are coming back. Hopefully they're starting to decline. But once again, just when we start feeling that we're recovering from toxic stress from COVID, once again, what happens is it sneaks it way back in there. And that is the experience of toxic stress. Now, here we go. COVID is a legit stressor. Now, anxiety happens a lot when we have these toxic stress experiences, but anxiety is a normal response to a stressful situation. Actually, anxiety is our body's defense mechanism. It is basically, it's the body's defense system, actually. It's an automatic defense system. what it does, if we enter a room, or if we enter an environment, or if we're around an individual that that we think that they're going to harm us, or they're threatening to us, and better yet, not just to us, but the people that we care about, our loved ones, immediately we become anxious. And this is because our brain, once again, it's about safety, signals to our body. It's time to become alert. It's time to become focused. It's time to prepare so that we can prevent anything bad from happening, not only to us, but to our loved ones. So in this picture, I actually took this off of Google around April 2020. And this is what you see as anxious behavior. It's people buying things such as that toilet paper thing. Oh my gosh, I heard it was coming back again. Please don't come back. But I bet you a lot of us have about 50 cases of toilet paper in our house right now. But anyway, people were buying a large amount of products, items that they typically wouldn't buy before COVID hit. And that's because it's anxious behavior. Because with COVID and anxious behavior, anxiety is fear of the unknown. And if you can think about that during COVID, any time that we had unknowns, I remember speaking with a lot of administrators and teachers. Are we going to go remote? Are we not going to go remote? And even so now, even working in an after school program, are the students are going to be here? How do we get a hold of these kids? Especially the ones that are living in those environments that we know that they're full of toxic stress and trauma. Fear of the unknown is one of the hugest ingredients to create anxiety. One thing to remember too about the brain is a pattern seeking device. And this is really important to understand because our brain, we know it's an apple because our brain, before you even know it, it's so quick. It is putting all of these images together of past experience that says, exactly, that is an apple. That is a pear, not an apple. It's because it's having all of these little patterns that come together to develop an apple. But when you think about the brain as a pattern seeking device for a safety reason, because the brain is about keeping us safe, what it does unconsciously, it is constantly looking for patterns so that it can predict what's coming next. A plus B equals C. So I know by past experience and patterns, your brain says this individual is a safe person because when I'm around Tammy and I'm in Tammy's house, I'm safe and I have a good time. So anytime that I see Tammy, my brain instantly says the patterns show me that Tammy is safe as well as her house. But what happened with COVID, what COVID did, we go to school, everything's the same. We are in your after school program, you go home, it's the same routines, the same patterns. But what COVID did is it took the certainty out of the equation. So there was a lot of what unknowns in it because it disrupted our patterns. So that's why it's important that we understand that we become anxious because our brain has a lot of unknowns. It took the uncertainty out. What happens now when we have a lot of uncertainty in our life, when we have a lot of anxieties? The what ifs attack. Okay. I don't know if you're a what ifer, but I can be a what ifer, especially at 3 a.m. in the morning. It's kind of like, what if this happens? I don't know what's going to happen. And then you sit there for hours and hours and you think, and this is your neocortex, the upper part of your brain that's trying to problem solving. So the what ifs come into play. So what happens with the what ifs, and we have to be extremely careful. What's unique about human beings is that we can become obsessive with the what ifs. And that's why when we do that, the next time you have an overwhelming what if, you start feeling yourself becoming more anxious. Remember this quote: the purpose of thinking is to let the ideas die instead of us dying. Isn't that the truth? Amen. It's good that we think. It's good that we have the what ifs because sometimes the what ifs keep us from doing something that's out of our capabilities. But when they become excessive, when they become so overpowering and we find ourselves having anxiety and fear and almost like crippling us, afraid to get out of bed, afraid to go to work, can't think at work because there's so many what ifs. Remember this: sometimes what we do with the what ifs is that we create the bear in our life, or we make the bear worse than what it already is. And a lot of times that bear is just a cub. So sometimes we have to be careful about the what ifs, that they don't overwhelm us, because what happens is if they overwhelm us and become too anxious, what we do is we go to some shortcuts, these self-care, or these strategies that we make up our own in order to try to reduce the stress. I can down a half a bag of Cheetos in one night when I'm stressed. And the reason why it's not a full, because there's a rule in the house. I can only eat half when my husband eats the other half. But I can down it because I'm trying to cope with my stress. A lot of some individuals use mood altering substances. The number one is alcohol. Alcohol, because it's a depressant. And what alcohol does is it basically takes the bear away, and it's present even if the bear's not there, you're drinking all this alcohol to take whatever you think is the bear away. So that's why it's important that we are cautious in working on strategies. Now, I'm not saying that drinking is bad, but when it's excessive amount, when we find it, getting in the way of our personal life, getting in the way of our workload, becoming a problem, that's where we really need to start working on some other self-care strategies that we can use besides the alcohol. So to reduce the what ifs, one of the ways we can do this is by reducing the unknowns, is to listen to a really great researcher. It's Dr. Bruce Perry. He's most famous for The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. Now, he is one of the leading experts on childhood trauma. And the reason why I'm using Dr. Bruce Perry in a self-care presentation is because he's done an extensive amount of research on stress and how stress affects the brain, and how to treat his clients so that they are able to become resilient and work through it. So he has found with his research that when we have stressors in our lives that are unpredictable, severe, prolonged, such as what we've gone through over the past year and a half, we become vulnerable to our environment. This is when we have cognitive impairments, where we have a difficult time concentrating, thinking. We have physical impairments. We have more backaches. We might feel like our eyes are going to come out of our head because of the pressure, or high blood pressure. Or we have emotional, mental health impairments, where I've met people that I've never seen depressed before during COVID. They've experienced this a large amount of depression in their lives. So one of the things that Dr. Bruce Perry found to be successful in working with his clients to make them resilient is to basically shift the patterns so our stressors become predictable, so that our stressors are moderate and yet controlled, where we believe that perceived control, where we believe that we have control over our situation. And then the individual becomes, as a result, resilient. And resilient is something that we're going to talk at the end of the presentation, why it's so important. Resilient is when that wave knocks you over, you're able to get back up again. All right, so that's what resilience is about. One of the ways that we can do this is to create those predictable environments that are moderate and controlled. We can create these habits and routines and rituals in our lives, which are extremely important. When I saw this, I had to put it on my slide. It is estimated that over an average adult makes, get this, 35,000 conscious decisions a day. That's on average. Some of you are probably making 50,000, especially if you're in a position where you're over other individuals, your responsibility of a school or a team of 15 people. So let's just face it, decisions take energy. They wipe us out. But routines and rituals, they save us energy. Now, I'm not talking about being a guru on this, being a ninja on here we are, here's the rituals. Sometimes it's just as simple as putting your clothes out the night before, you go to work, or making your lunch the day before. So in the refrigerator, all you have to do is open the refrigerator, throw it in your bag. That way you're not just grabbing something that's not nutritional. Or if you drink coffee or tea, having it all lined up so all you do is you go down, it's set up, or having your stuff by the door so you don't have to hunt for 15 minutes for your keys. That's me right there. And I'm all stressed out, so I get even more stressed out. Everything's right there now by my door. So these are just having these routines and rituals that really could help you um, to reduce some of those stress levels. Also, schedules take the unknown out of the equation. Now, I'm not saying this is a great schedule, I pulled it off, but I'm not saying you have to do it like this. But have your own schedule. You wake up at this time, you try to get to bed this time. You eat dinner, you exercise at this time, or you go for a walk at this time. Just having a daily schedule, it takes the unknown out of that equation. Remember, unknown equals anxiety. So we're trying to reduce his anxiety so that we don't have to self-medicate ourselves. Alrighty, so that's important. So let's just face it, there is comfort in predictability. Remember, the brain is a pattern-seeking device. It's trying to predict what's coming next. So if we can help our brains out so that it's not going to trigger our body to become anxious, we're going to give our brain what it's looking for. It's automatic, we can't control it. We're going to give our brain some predictability. So these are two important questions. What's your stress level? Alrighty, so what's your stress level? Look at the time, because I do not ever go over on my presentations. What's your stress level, and how do you know when you are stressed? Okay, so let's start with the second one. How do you know when you're stressed? A lot of times we have people say, I'm stressed, and they just leave it there. Well, that's almost like just admiring the problem and not doing anything about it. Okay, and we're going to talk about that, how that's a no-no. It's important that we zero in, that we start to identify. So how do we know we're stressed? Is it a physical response? I mean, do we get headaches, backaches? Do we do this more? I know me. I get my chest starts to get really tight. Okay, it gets really tight. But some of us, it might be also an emotional. It could just be mood swings. It could be I get more irritable. Yeah, I'm there too, guys. See, I'm not perfect. My fuse is really short when I get stressed. So I tend to try to not be around a lot of people until I can do a self-care strategy because I tend to say and do things that I regret later. And we all do that, so it's important that we identify these. And where are you at your stress level? Are you fatigued, panic, burnout, breakdown, stress overload? It's important that we identify these. But for those of us who are not aware, oh, let me go back to with this. Sorry, I forgot something I was going to say that was really important. It's important that we understand the cause because if we actually intervene at the front end, then what we can do is we can work with the cub before the cub becomes the big bear that's chasing us. For instance, I'll just use myself as a guinea pig here. I just told you that I have a lot of anxiety in my chest when I get nervous, when I get stressed. So if I do not have a self-care strategy for that, I kid you not, I more than likely will have a panic attack. A panic attack isn't going to help me, or it's not going to help the people that I work with or that I work for. And so basically I have to basically work with the cub in applying a self-care strategy in order for mama bear coming in and chasing after me, which would be the panic attack. That's the significance of knowing our stress levels and what makes us stressful. Know the triggers. Is it a physical or is it emotional or both? So for those of us who are like saying, you know what, I really don't know. I have to be honest with you, Miss Jones. I never thought about it. I'm going to be sending you out a handout. It's page 1, page 2. When you print it out in portrait. Otherwise, it's going to look funny. It's not going to be resourceful. Print it out in portrait orientation. But this is adapted for teachers and after school providers. This is a great way that you can figure out where you are on your stress level. And if you are on a moderate anxious or extremely anxious, look at and compare it with the amount of self-care strategies you're using in your life. I've known some people that say, well, my self-care strategy, I go home and have wine after wine after wine or a beer, or a bag of chips. That's not technically the best self-care strategy because it's going to have a long-term negative effect on our body and our mental status. Alrighty. So it's important that we know where we are and that we start to continue before the cub becomes mama bear and starts chasing after us. So for stress management, part 1, it's important that we know our buttons. We know our buttons. I'm just going to, once again, I use myself. What makes me stress, what makes my chest tight now that I know, okay, my chest is tight. What makes it is when I open up my calendar and it looks like this. I kid you not, this was September for me. It's not me in the picture, but if you saw my calendar, I couldn't show you because it's names in there. It looked like that in September, and October starting to look like this. So I would sit back and I'd be like, I can't do this. And so I would have to do one of my self-care strategies, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, is control the controllables. So if I don't do that, I can end up in a panic attack, or I'll sit there and I'll just stare out my window. The stress response, my sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and the stress response of freeze, staring out the window, and I just can't do this. I cannot do my job anymore. And a lot of us feel that way sometimes in our lives. So it's important that once we know where it affects us and we know our buttons. So when I open up my calendar, my appointment book, and it looks like this, I immediately have 1 or 2 self-care strategies in place, ready in case my chest starts to tighten up. Another one, ladies, work with me on this one. All right, I know, bless his heart. He tries very hard. He cooks really good. He's a great cook. But you know what? I don't need this right now when I come home. I don't got time for this. So basically, I automatically know I have to put some type of intervention in there. He's trying to help out, but once again, bless his heart, it kills me. But I have to have a self-care strategy in place, ready for that when I know it's time for him to cook, whenever, because that's a stress release for him. So it's important to know our buttons. And basically, I have to be honest with you too. I try to control the dishes. I try to control my schedule, and it gets exhausting when we try to control when we try to control the uncontrollables. So what we need to do in our lives is to control the controllables, what we can control, and not worry about what we can't control. Don't focus on that. And let me give you an example of how this works. This is amazing. I've had more people tell me I do that now, and it's helped me. So I actually had somebody from a director from a county say, she emailed me like a page, and she was saying how much this has helped her in her life. And so I hope it helps you as well. So this has 2 steps to it. I'm a step person. Can you tell? Step 1, step 2, part 1, part 2. Step 1 is organize. Step 2 is prioritize. Okay, so here's we're going to go with the activity control the controllable. So let's sort it out. On the left side, what you do is you put your T on your piece of paper and you write down what you can control. Okay, and this is really effective. I actually have something like this on my wall that helps me. What you can control. Then on the right side, you put what you can't control. And then you start to think about, how much energy do I put in what I can't control? I'm about 80% there, guys. So I've had to really train my brain not to focus on the can'ts. Remember, our brain is to do what? To keep us safe. So it's going to look at the threats before it looks at the positives. It's going to say, "Oh my gosh, we can't, we can't." So let's retrain our brain. Let's not focus on these can'ts. All right. So then we already have it organized. So then we need to prioritize. Because sometimes our cans, what we can do, gets a bit long because there's a lot we can do in our situation. So then we prioritize, number one, what's important to us, set boundaries between work and home. 2, build relationships, whatever's your can, prioritize, get your wins, work on 1, then work on 2, work on 3. But notice at the bottom, we have in red, volunteer on a committee. This is great. High five to this person who wants to do that. But guess what? It's just too much right now. I'm having too many waves come at me. I need to take a break, and that's okay. Sometimes we just need to have the cans without a number on them. We can wait until the waves, till the water starts to become more shallow, till we can catch a breath, till we can get resilient. Then sometimes we just got to put those cans on the back burner. Now let's look at this side, the right side, cans. Elsa from Frozen, she gets it. And I literally have Elsa, another one on my wall. I'm a visual person because imagery, our brain processes imagery 60,000 times faster than it does text. So if I'm stressed, I can just look over there, and if I have an image, immediately my brain's processing that. And so basically, Elsa gets it, she just lets it go. And that's what we have to do with the can'ts. Just let it go. And sometimes I even say, let it go. Seriously, not to be a fool, make myself look like a fool, but I literally have to do that sometimes in my life. Specifically because life, especially now during COVID, when it comes back again, I'm once again virtual. I was so happy. I was going out to schools and after school care programs and talking face to face, doing what I love doing best, but now I'm back to virtual because of COVID. So I just had to let it go and just work with what I have, not admire my problem, but solve my problems. Um, uh, some people didn't like the T. I've had some people like this, control the control better. We have a circle. This is actually what I have on my wall, a circle, but it's my own. What you can control is within your circle. What you can't control is without your circle. And if it's not within my circle, I just let it go. I don't worry about it because there's only so much I can do. I'm one person, and I looked and I still don't have a cape on my back. And I guarantee if every one of you listening, all 73 one of you, look around. I don't think one of you have a cape on your back. So we have to train our brains to let it go. It's okay. So here's another one of my favorite slides. It's basically when you say to yourself, when you're around this person and you say, not unless you're dysregulated, you say in your head, please just land the plane, lady. This is the person that we're around that just loves to admire their problems rather than fix it. You ever been around that person? You're like, well, have you ever thought about, no, it won't work. Well, what about, it's not going to work. I try, no, no. And it's almost like draining. It's like an emotional vampire clutched to your neck, or you go in these meetings where everyone is so focused on the problem and they admire it rather than they get stuck. They get stuck in this problem. So it's important that we get past the bads, we get past the awfuls, and we just land that plane. But a lot of times it's difficult. And once again, when we get stuck in this, it puts a lot of stress on our mental status and also our physical status. But something that really prevents us from landing the plane a lot is a lot to do with what we take into our bodies, what we take into our visuals. For instance, when we really think about all of the imagery when we watch the news that we're bringing into our bodies. Remember, our brain processes images 60,000 times faster than it does text. So think about all the images that are bringing in when we watch the text. How about Facebook? Sometimes it can be naughty on Facebook. Sometimes Facebook is used to attack somebody or to sit gossip. Or think about social media or emails. all of these negative things that are coming in. So what happens then, we trick our brains. Our brains are tricked into thinking that there's a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 bad, 1 good. So then the world becomes more negative. But actually, and if you look, Sean Aker he's the author of that quote there. He's actually a renowned psychologist. It's positive psychology. Yes, there is such a thing. And I think he comes from Yale or Oxford. I can't remember. But he does a lot of research on happiness. What makes some people happy and others not? And he finds out that 90% of our long-term happiness, not short-term, yeah, that was great. The next day you're not feeling so good. But 90%, that's a lot, it's significant, of our long-term happiness is not predicted by our external world, all right, by what's around us, but it's predicted by the way our brain processes the world around us. Okay, so look at those lenses there. What lens are you looking through? Okay, it's important that we do that. And this is where the television and the news comes into play. And I'm not saying don't watch the news. I'm not saying, well, Miss Jones says I should be an ostrich with my head in the sand. Absolutely not. That's not my message. But be careful of how much news, how much negativity you're bringing into your life. There's a lot of research on the news and what we watch on TV, the movies that we watch, the video games that some of us are playing. Incredible, negative. But just listen to this. Just 3 minutes of negative news in the morning will significantly, and anytime when you do research, the word significantly means there's a lot of research to back it up. Significantly increases your chances of a negative experience over the course of day. Okay. So basically 3 minutes of just watching negative news in the morning. There's also research that shows that when you have children that have to go take a test or they're afraid to go to school, if you have them watch happy videos like those animal videos or something funny right before they go to school and you have them watch like just 3 minutes of it or 5 minutes of it, studies show that they actually have a better day at school. And some, not all, but some have even done better on their test just because they started the day off with a positive mood, with positive images. And so rather than focusing on the negative noises surrounding us, ask yourself the question, what am I doing about my stress? What lens am I looking through? How am I choosing to view the world around me? Yes, there is a lot of negative out there, but guess what? There's also a lot of good out there. There's a lot of good out there. I watch before I go to bed almost every night. It's a 15-minute videos. It's a different one. It's something about humankind. Humans being kind, something like that. It's a video of people helping other people helping animals. It reminds me that when I watch the news and I see all this negative stuff happen, it reminds me there are good people out there and you're one of them. So I encourage you all to really take that into consideration when you're looking at that. So when I talk about a lot of these things, when I talk about all these strategies and all this negative in our lives that we have, even though it's not as negative sometimes, and we have all this stress that's happening, we have COVID. And when I go into schools and I talk to administrators, I talk to teachers, I go into aftercare programs, and the thing that's typically missing, maybe not as much now because we become more awake to it, but sometimes what we're missing is the self-care. And I firmly believe that self-care just isn't a personal responsibility. It is a responsibility of our organizations to be able to provide this to our workers at work. So just to say, well, you work on your self-care and when you bring it to work and work, absolutely not. We have to have self-care not only at a personal part of our life, but it needs to also be instituted in our organizations for our workers. Because if we don't have people taking care of our students, if we have a lot of, if we have a lot of, educators that help students and they're getting burnout or they have compassion, they feel that they're having vicarious traumatization, what happens is they leave the field. And we've got a lot of great people leaving the field. We just need to have a little bit more self-care strategies for them. So I'm going to talk a lot about what self-care just in this PowerPoint presentation is not. Alrighty, you are not going to hear me talk about as we go on to talk about self-care strategies. It's not about oil and bath and pedicures. I guarantee you that. It's not about weekend-long Netflix binges, then sleep in late the next day. Absolutely not. It's not about engaging in retail therapy. I know it's good. It is a releaser, but you know what? My self-care presentation is not about retail therapy without a regards to our budget, because that just puts more stress on us when we see what, oh my gosh, I got, when you get the visa bill, not good. It's not anything pumpkin spice related. I know it's great. I know it smells wonderful, but that's not what I'm talking about with self-care strategy. Specifically because I've had one teacher say this to me. When she saw this, she goes, "Yeah, you're right. So my work schedule is full. I have a lot of students moving from home to home who are living in toxic stress home environments while entering my school dysregulated. But if I can just go home and take a hot bath, I'll be stress free, right? Not. It doesn't happen that way. So what we need to do is we need to get serious. We need to get serious about our self-care. We need to get serious. And now is the time. Now is the time. Why not now? So there's two parts to understanding how to get serious about self-care. I'm going to talk a lot about in part one. Once again, there's a part one, energy management. This is the way we recharge our batteries. So our gas tanks are full of energy. Okay. So they're not getting deleted. Also, part two is resiliency development. This is where we persevere through challenging times. This is where, when we have that wave that hits us over, that we have enough self-care strategies in our pocket so that we're able to get back up. It's about taking our gas tanks and making them even bigger. Okay. And that's important because if you've ever been around that person where they have a full gas tank, but because it's not a big gas tank, they can have one or two waves that hit them and they're done. They're done for the rest of the week. We need to not only have full gas tanks, but we need to have bigger gas tanks. So one question to ask us about energy management is, what do you do to get your energy back when encountered by stressors? We never think about this, do we? We never think about this until it's too late, until after the effect. So the time to think about when to apply to get a self-care strategy, not all of them, but maybe one or two, get your wins and do it well, is before the wave hits. So let's talk about this. One of the things that I do and we need to focus on when we're working on our energy levels is what's called regulatory fatigue. It's basically self-control failure. This is where you have individuals find it harder to resist making impulse purchases, inhibit prejudice, or regulate their emotions. And this is where we do things or say things that we typically wouldn't do. But because we have self-control failure, we find ourselves doing this, and then we start feeling bad about ourselves. Then we start feeling guilty about ourselves. Then we start thinking, I'm just not a good mother, or I'm horrible at what I do at my job. That's absolutely not true, but it's because we have regulatory fatigue. Now, a lot of individuals, HALT is what we use for individuals who are working with through the alcoholism, and some of the treatments that they do to help them is through HALT. Now, HALT is basically hungry, angry, lonely, late. It's in quotes because Dr. Jim Harris, who is the associate director over the Autism Training Center, he's over us. He put in another one, late and tired. All of these things make us dysregulated, every single one of them. So when we're hungry, it's important that we have a healthy diet. We have snacks, that we're eating healthy, that we're having not carbs. Carbs will get us high, but it'll bring us down. Okay. We have to have protein, protein, protein. Protein equals energy. It could be anything that you like. It could be fish, chicken, and it doesn't have to be all the time. Like I said, you don't have to be a guru at this. Just every once in a while, make sure you have that protein. But when you're at school, if you have a snack, don't go for the pretzels, maybe go for some nuts or maybe go for some fruit, some dried fruit. It's important that we have that because our diets are not where they need to be, if they're not balanced, then we're going to become dysregulated. A lot of us, when we become angry, that's when we say and do things that we typically wouldn't do. There's a lot of people that actually got in trouble. I know this one girl, she says, what, I was so angry, I just left the meeting. And she actually got written up after that. But what problem is that she needed to possibly work on having some emotional regulations. One of them could be when she starts to feel that stress in her, like for me, I'm getting stressed, this person's making me mad, my lung or my chest is getting tight. I can do some breathing techniques. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out until I calm down. Or I can do some grounding techniques where you basically say, you see 5 things, you name 5 things that you see, you name 4 things that you touch, you name 3 things that you smell. It's a grounding just to get your mind off of it so that you can get back before your sympathetic nervous system, which is in charge of your stress response, kicks in. Lonely, gotta speed up. Loneliness. We're going to talk a lot about deep social networks, the importance of that. We did late when we talked about schedules, routines, and tired. You're all going to laugh at this. The research says that you should have at least 7 hours of sleep a night. Now, when I do this, I have people like, oh, that's not me. On the average, I think people that I spoke to when I do this, it's about 5. But you know what? If you can't get 7, try to get 5.5 or 6 and work your way up. Okay, but the research says 7 is what an average adult should have to maintain a healthy physical and mental health conditions. So when do you need a mental break, a mental rest? It's important. Here's some examples. When we find ourselves, when we do the things that we typically do on a daily basis, but we find ourselves having a difficult concentrating, difficult following through with it, or when we read, when you're reading a book and you've read the same page or the same paragraph 10 times over, and you're like, this is, this is countless. Why am I doing this? That's when you need a mental rest. That's when you just need to sometimes get up and take a break. One of the things that you can do for this is turn off digital devices around you, or you can repeat something that makes you feel better. Practice mindfulness meditations, to sometimes just staring at the window, or basically looking at your computer, or that's a device. It's just sometimes just mindfulness is you can basically just what I just said, pick 5 things in the room that you can see, 4 things in the room that you can touch, things that you can smell. Just ground yourself, or listen to music is another great thing. I listen a lot. In the background, I listen to nature sounds. Nature sounds, actually, there's a lot of research that proves that if you can take somebody in a stress response of fight, flight, and freeze, and just by applying nature sounds into the background, it will reduce that. I've actually had one administrator say, that works because I am he actually is a vet. He was at Vietnam, and he said one of the things they gave me was one of those machines for my room that was nature sounds, and I can't sleep without it now. So actually, giving ourselves that mental health rest. So what's one of the most important things that Americans do in the morning, though? What's one of the most things that Americans do in the morning? We need to focus on this. What do we do, though? We reach for our phones, do we not? Reach for our cell phones, open emails, social media. We scroll down. We have to do it. We're addicted. We can't help it. But who's really in control? Is it us, or is it our cell phones? So it's really important that we focus on detoxing ourselves from technology. This is really hard for us to do because we're so used to having it in our lives, because research shows that on average, adults spend, get this, 11 hours per day listening, reading, and interacting with what we see on the media and social media. 11 hours per day. So yes, we have become, and I've actually had some people tell me, do you realize just 10 minutes drove me crazy? But a lot of times it works. Here's a good example. I give you this 30-minute challenge, detox from cell phones. Please do that. Detox from technology. When you do that, there's a police officer that did this. And what he did was that every day that he came home, he went straight upstairs. It was just known. Stressful job. Okay. He took his work clothes off. He put his husband, daddy clothes on, and he sat there for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, depending on the stress of the day, detox himself of everything. Once he collected his mind, once he got himself into his home environment, he opened the door and came back down. And then he found himself that he was less able to say or do things that he regretted at the end, that he regretted later. So this is a very successful police officer who was able to do that. Movement. The problem that we have with movement, sorry, I'm going fast, but I only have less than 15 minutes. The problem that we have with movement or even exercise is we think that we have to buy the 1-year membership to the Cross Gym Fitness, or the Cross Fitness Gym, I mean. Already, or we think we have to do like 100 push-ups or 15 sit-ups, or we have to run 14 miles until we're exhausted to make it feel like exercise. Now, if you're one of those people, high five. Really, seriously, continue to do it. I envy you, but that's not me. That's not me. It might not be some of you listening to this. When I'm talking about movement, I'm talking about just moving, seriously, because when our sympathetic nervous system, remember, that's the fight, flight response. Whenever we get stress in our life, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in. And what does it do? It pushes out stress hormones, one of them being the cortisol. We don't want cortisol in our bodies, but one of the stress hormones that it does automatically, we have no control, is it pushes out cortisol. Now, cortisol in itself is not bad, because we need that to get us through the wave when it attacks us. But once the bear is gone, we need to get that cortisol out of our body. But how do we do that? Movement. Because if we don't push the cortisol out of our body, what happens? Look it up. The big 3 things, though: we gain weight. Cortisol, if it's not flushed out of our body, we gain weight. We get high blood pressure. We get mood swings, or we get muscle tension, muscle soreness. So we need to push it out. And one way we push that out is by movement and exercise. And here's some great way to do that: is walking up and down the stairs. So if you don't have the treadmill, they're very expensive. Just if you have stairs at home, walk up and down them. Go for a walk. It's nice to do it with other people, especially those that we care about. Walk a dog. Yoga is really great. Everybody I know that says I'm a yoga person, they say it's the best thing I've ever done. Or park your car at daytime farther from the entrance to the school or farther from the entrance of the school. Every step counts. Get that cortisol out. Stretching is really important. We need to have some stretching techniques. This is when we need a mental break. Sometimes these are great techniques to use. Highly recommended by all of the people out there who do research on stretching. So it's important, especially for those of us who are sitting in a chair or standing all day long, get these stretch breaks in when you can. Now, this is really important. This is the last of our energy strategy. This is one of the most important is social support networks. The most powerful buffer in times of stress and distress is our social connectedness, our social connectedness. And we found this out more so than ever during COVID. I have dealt with people that have never been depressed before. I've never seen them depressed. And I would email them, contact them via Zoom during COVID. And they would say, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull through this. There was a teacher, he's a teacher slash preacher. And he said, I need my people. I have my family, but I need my people. My people are my support. My people are my energy. So he was having a very difficult time because he was separated from that social connectedness. Because that's our relationships are the root. They heal us in so many ways. So it's important that we surround ourselves with positive, trustworthy people. These are the people that have our back. These are the people that know our goals. They know our interest. And when that wave hits us and knocks us down real hard and we can't seem to get back up because the next wave comes, these are the people that come up despite you saying anything negative to them. Because sometimes when we get knocked down, we get dysregulated and we say things that aren't pleasant. But despite that, because they know us, they care about us, they love us, they come to us and they pick us up. Now, if you have a tree full of this many people that are positive in your life, consider yourself, the lucky charm guy. You found the golden pot at the end of the rainbow because they're not as easy to find. But if you have this many, go for it. But at least try to find at least one, two, or three that are these positive people in your life. Or you just might be that person says, I just don't like to share that much of my life with people. Just have one person, though. One person. It might be your significant other or a mentor, but it's important to have that one person that's there when you get knocked down. Because you know what? Sometimes it's just really important to know that we are not alone. And it's those people that let us know that. It's that just remember, I'm with you. I got you. And I can't, I have positive people at my work. My program coordinator, Alicia Zeman, is one of them. And sometimes when I just feel like I just didn't do as well as I thought, she'll come in and she goes, I got you, girl. Don't worry about it. I got your back, literally, quote unquote. I can't tell you how powerful that is for me to hear, especially from somebody that I work underneath. So we all need support from time to time. Every single one of us on this call, I do. Every single one of us on the Zoom, we need support time to time, from time to time. And also a great thing to think about is consistency versus intensity. If you look to the right, I hope every one of you were spending some great time over your short summer break. But these are great, wonderful. But really for these deep social roots, it needs to be consistent. Maybe once or twice, doing something with your family, making dinner on a regular basis, consistency. And that's why I have this one. It's the connection challenge. I will not do a self-care presentation without having this slide. I created it during COVID because so many people, especially my teacher preacher friend, um, I gave him this slide to have that connection challenge. It's just a way to be connected, and you can do it even after COVID. It's important that we keep that consistency in those deep-rooted relationships with the people that we care about. So this is where you have me for X minutes of time. What would you like to do? And this is really important. It's not what I think we should do. You're asking this person that you love, that you care about, that you want to spend time. What do you want to do? Because I'm considering you. I'm I'm seeing you and I consider you. And I've had actually parents come up to me and say, you know what? All my little girl wanted to do is all they wanted to do is they wanted to turn music on and jump up and down and do goofy things. And she said it was so amazing. And I got the best workout ever. So she implemented that into her, once or twice a week. She would do that. And she was pushing all those cortisol stress hormones out while doing it. Another teacher came up to me and says, you know what I did? And I used to cry at this all the time when I would present it. He said, the other day, so I went up to my son. I took your challenge. I took your connection challenge. I went up to my son and I said, son, what do you want to do this weekend? And he said, Dad, I just want to go fishing. And his dad was like, I never thought fishing, because he always went by himself. He said, that was the best afternoon that I have had in a long time. Just going fishing with my son. No, nothing there, just him and I on the boat, just talking about life. What's he going to do? He took the connection challenge. And I encourage you, you know, wipe off those good old fashioned board games, wipe the dust off, and just get together with your family or those that you care about. Sit on the back deck, build a bonfire, play outside, do whatever it is that you need to do. So now we have part 2 before I go on crying some more. I can be a little sap. I'm so sorry. All right, so now we're going to go to part 2, resiliency development. So resiliency basically is how we cope successfully in the face of significant change or adversity, that wave after wave. How do we get back up so we become resilient? Well, we know one way is to have those positive people in our lives, but another way to do it is to increase the capacity of our tank. And this is where I told you before, when you have those individuals where their gas tank is full, but because it's a small gas tank, when 2 waves hit them, they're depleted. So we need to make sure that we actually are working on building our gas tanks so they're bigger. One way to do this, and this is my second favorite slide, and yes, I'm going to be able to do it. Rational optimism. Rational optimism is not putting on rose-colored glasses, alrighty? So if you look to the right, this is an actual picture. It was a picture taken right before the bull charged. Get that? This is not a rational optimist. We think optimistic, oh, they have to be thought happy all the time. This is just being stupid. Getting in the car and not putting your seatbelt on because you think that you've got that ability of being an optimistic. That's just being dumb. Okay. Rational optimism is having a realistic assessment of the present. You're going to have good times. Absolutely, you're going to have good times, but you're also going to have bad times. So when those waves hit you, when a wave hits you and another wave hits you, a rational optimist, they believe that their behavior matters because they have the potential to create a better reality. Alrighty. So I believe, and they truly believe this, it's that perceived control, the belief. I believe that my behavior matters and I have the potential to create a better reality. And because what they also do is they identify the problem. They don't admire it because problems can be fixable. Not all problems are permanent. And they visualize a successful outcome. And here's this. I can say a lot of people that I know in my life that do this, and you'd be like, I don't care, I don't even know them. How about this? Muhammad Ali. Anytime that before he went into the ring, he visualized himself winning. Another one, Michael Jordan, get this, every time when he would hit the, he'd get the ball, would go shoot down the hoop. He said, every time before I, got the ball there, I'm not a basketball person, can you tell? He'd shoot the ball. He said, I visualized the ball going in the basket. Jim Carrey, he visualized himself being
We have
successful.
about 2 minutes left.
Yep, I got it. I've got it. I'm going to do this. I've got it. Shoo, visualize. Effort equals results. So basically, rational optimism is not the full glass is half full or half empty. Rational optimism is effort equals outcome. My behavior matters. This is last but not least. Some of the things that I encourage you, I can do this. I got 2 minutes. I'm rocking. One of the things that our brain, once again, it's wired to look out for the negative. It's wired to look out for the negative, but we have to rewire our brain that it's not always negative. We have to look, it's okay to be positive. The daily gratitude journal is really important. It works for a lot of people. They love it. 3 things that you are grateful for, you write them down at nighttime, and in the morning, you read them. What this does is it trains your brain to see the positive first. Journaling, it's highly, very powerful, where you write one positive experience over the past 24 hours. Allow your brain to relive the experience when you reread it. And conscious acts of kindness, I did this and it really helps. 1 positive act per day, whether it's a sticky note or you tell somebody you're awesome, you're great. And what do? You're releasing dopamine whenever you get that smile back from somebody. So what you feed grows. Trust me. I'm sorry I went through these slides real quickly. If you want the PowerPoint presentation, I have no trouble sending it to anybody who wants it. Hey, I'm here. I just want to give. So here's my name. Here's my information. If you want to get my PowerPoint presentation, please don't hesitate to email me, visit our website. And I did it. I have 1 minute to spare. Whew. How's that, Patricia?
Perfect.
Awesome. Sorry, I had to rush the other half real fast, but there's a lot to talk about in an hour.
I know you haven't been able to see the comments, but there were some very, very encouraging comments to you. Everybody has really enjoyed the session and
good.
taken a lot of information from it.
Thank you so much, everybody. And if there's anything that I can do for you, please let me know. I'm here for you. Once again, this is my passion. Self-care is my number one thing that I love to talk about. So good. Thank you so much. How many people?
Thank you, everyone.
attended?
Enjoy the rest of your sessions.
Thank you. Patricia, about how many people you think attended?
72.
72, okay. Because I work for the state, the West Virginia Department of Ed, I have to keep record of how many people I present to.
Do you need the metrics that they have that they'll collect at the end of it?
Yes, that would be great if I can have that. And also the handouts I'm going to send to all of the people who with their emails for this, so I can send them my handouts.
Okay, I'll let Susan know.
Yeah, I emailed Susan, so she's going
Okay.
to email me all of that stuff. But thank you, and thank you so much for helping me out. And oh my gosh, is it Lucas?
Yes, I think that's who it was.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
if he's
Lucas.
still here, thank you so much, Lucas, for all your help. You were awesome. And I
You're
think I
welcome.
just need to. I just think I need to end this. I'll do this.
Okay, I need to jump on
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much, you all.